to Dave Rendall. He's going to take us through a little bit of his content and tell us where he's coming from to make us all better today. So Dave, take it away, my friend.
That is the perfect introduction. We're going to try to get better. We're going to help other people get better. So how do you get better? How do you help other people get better? You do it in a way that's sort of the opposite of everything that we've ever been told about how to get better. If you're familiar with EO sort of stuff, they love experience share. And so this started with an experience that I had that I want to share with you that I think will end up being relevant. So when I was in school, I was always in trouble for three things. I couldn't sit still, be quiet, or do what I was told. Teachers didn't like me very much. They called me obnoxious, rebellious, inappropriate, immature, told me I had no self-discipline and no self-control. And if I couldn't fix those things, I was going to end up homeless and living in a van down by the river. Sooner or later, they'd kick me out of class and send me to the principal's office. I was in third grade. I was 8 years old. I got sent to the principal's office. He sat me down on his lap, which seems questionable now looking back on it. And he told me there was three kinds of bad people in this world. There's bad people, really bad people, and people who are too far gone. And I'm like, wow, this story doesn't even have good people in it. I was 8 years old. I was in third grade, and he was so upset that I couldn't sit still, be quiet, and do what I was told. But he wasn't just upset. He wanted me to get better. He wanted me to get better. He wanted to help me get better. And he thought the way to do that was by identifying my weaknesses and helping me to fix them. He was teaching me what his parents, his teachers, and his employers had taught him about how to succeed. He had the right intentions. He had the wrong framework. My teachers had the right intentions. They had the wrong framework. My parents had the right intentions. They had the wrong framework. My parents loved me, but they called me motor mouth almost every day of my life in a constant attempt to remind me that my biggest problem was my inability to be quiet. They thought that they could help me succeed by helping me find and fix my weaknesses. They were teaching me what their parents and their teachers and their employers had taught them. They had the right intentions, but they had the wrong framework. I know you all have the right intentions. I want to help you find a new framework and a framework that I think is more effective today. I'm not the only one who had trouble at school. Ken Robinson says many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not, because the thing they were good at school wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. Now, this doesn't stop in school. Read it again. Many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not thought they weren't. That's present tense. Many highly talented, brilliant, creative people still think they aren't highly talented, brilliant, and creative because the thing they were good at school wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. This is an ongoing problem. This isn't just a problem with kids. This is a problem with the adults that you run to. It might be a problem that you're experiencing. Many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not because the thing they were good at, their strength, wasn't valued, it was ignored or denied, or it was actually stigmatized, right? What are your talents? What is your brilliance? What is your creativity? And is it possible that those things have been framed by others, parents, teachers, employers, as weaknesses instead of strengths? Many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not because the thing they were good at home wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. This doesn't just happen at school. It happens at home as parents try to prepare you for the real world, as they try to help you succeed in school, as they try to help you get ready for life. They oftentimes feel like it's necessary to find and fix your weaknesses, to point out what's wrong with you. And sometimes they miss your talent, your brilliance, and your creativity. But it doesn't just happen at home and school. It happens at work. Many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not because the thing they were good at work wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. We've all worked in environments where we brought our best to work. We brought our strengths to work. But our coworkers, our bosses, they didn't see it. Our customers, our clients, they saw weakness instead of strength. And I realized this process of mistaking strength for weakness. The thing they were good at, that strength, wasn't valued. It was ignored or denied, or it was actually stigmatized. We saw people's strengths, but instead of recognizing it, we only saw weakness, right? We only saw weakness. And I realized that this is exactly what happened to me, because I spent my whole life getting in trouble because I couldn't sit still, be quiet, and do what I was told. And then as an adult, I became a professional speaker, and I get paid to stand up, not to sit down. I get paid to talk, not to be quiet. I get paid to run my own business, not to do what other people tell me to do. Every single one of my weaknesses, and this is crucial. I'm not arguing today that you don't have weaknesses, that your coworkers don't have weaknesses. I know your spouse or your partner definitely has weaknesses. Your kids are filled with weaknesses. We can see those weaknesses. I'm not telling you weaknesses don't exist. What I'm telling you is those weaknesses are also strengths. I didn't turn my weaknesses into strengths. This isn't about turning other people's weaknesses into strengths. It's recognizing that their weaknesses already are strengths, that you're framing that characteristic negatively instead of positively, and you're missing what's possibly the most powerful thing about that person. I make a living now doing all the things that people spent their whole life trying to stop me from doing. I get rewarded every day for the same things that people used to punish me for. I get praised every day now for the things that people used to criticize me for. Not because I changed it, not because I did something different, but simply because I kept going when everybody told me to stop. I turned up the volume when everybody told me to turn it down. And so that's what this presentation is about today. If we're going to get better and help other people get better, it's about reimagining what weaknesses and strengths really are and how we use them in the real world. Parker Palmer says we're led to truth by our weaknesses as well as our strengths. This isn't about hiding from it. This isn't about pretending they don't exist. It's about seeing that weakness and strength are two sides of the same coin. And when we see that and acknowledge that, it changes the way we move forward, the way we get better, and the way we help other people get better. So my theory today is really simple. It's that what makes us weird also makes us wonderful, and what makes us weak also makes us strong. What makes us weird also makes us wonderful, and what makes us weak also makes us strong. Can you do that for a second, right? Can you reimagine that maybe, right? Weird isn't bad, strange isn't bad, that weird is wonderful, and that the things that you've thought of as weaknesses in yourselves and in others might be strengths instead of something that needs to be repaired. The idea here is that every characteristic that we have is a strength and a weakness at the same time. Every characteristic we have is a strength and a weakness at the same time. A simple way to think about this is like side effects. Every medicine has side effects. There's no such thing as a medicine without side effects. Even things as simple as Tylenol and Advil and aspirin have side effects. And the only way to get the benefits that a medicine provides is to be willing to suffer those side effects. If you say, no, I can't risk those side effects, then you can't have those benefits. If you say, no, I'm not going to take a medicine until somebody can show me that it's perfectly safe, then you can never take any medicine. You can never get any of the benefit, and you'll certainly avoid all the side effects, but then you'll never get the benefit of any of the medicines. And people are that same way. Every person has side effects. There's no such thing as a person without side effects. And so if you're not going to hire someone until you find someone without side effects, if you're not going to marry someone until they're a person without side effects, if you're not going to accept your children until they can demonstrate that they have no more side effects, if you're waiting for the perfect person, it's like waiting for the perfect medicine. You'll be waiting forever. And instead of wishing that people didn't have side effects, instead of wishing medicine didn't have side effects, the question is, what is the benefit and is it worth the risk? What is the upside and is it worth the downside? Peter Drucker said it this way. He said, strong people always have strong weaknesses too, where there are peaks, there are valleys. Strong people always have strong weaknesses too, where there are peaks, there are valleys. In your life, here's what I want you to think about. If you want strong coworkers, if you want strong employees, if you want strong children, if you want a strong spouse or a strong partner, a good question to ask is, am I willing to deal with strong weaknesses too? If I want a strong person, am I willing to deal with strong weaknesses too? Am I willing to deal with the valleys in order to get the peaks? And here's what I would tell you. Based on this metaphor, here's what's actually true. The deeper the valley, the higher the potential peak, right? The deeper the valley, the higher the potential peak. In other words, the people with the most negative potential also have the most positive potential. The people with the most negative potential also have the most positive. The people with the biggest weaknesses also have the potential to have the biggest strengths. If we're willing to see it that way and willing to see, instead of seeing, oh, that person is disadvantaged, that person is at risk, that person has the potential for problems, also see that person is tremendously promising, right? Strong people always have strong weaknesses too, where there are peaks, there are valleys. Now, this is hard to accept. So let's watch what happens when you don't accept it. You're thinking, Dave, I mean, the whole reason I'm in this Petra thing, I want to get better, Dave. I'm not trying to compromise, right? I'm not trying to just leave things alone. I want to get better. I'm going to fix it, Dave. I'm going to fix it. You're wrong. I'm going to fix it. So let me show you what happens when you fix it. When you don't acknowledge that strengths and weaknesses are connected and you try to fix it, let me show you what happens. When you try to fix the weakness, you damage the strength. Let's look at Walmart. They have one strength, low prices. They have three major weaknesses: poor service, poor quality, poor design. Let's take the traditional approach and let's fix them and watch what happens. Let's just fix service. Let's hire more people. Let's train them better. Let's pay them better. Let's give them better benefits. And let's watch the costs at Walmart go up. And let's watch their prices go up. And as we fix their weakness, we damage their strength. Walmart has more than 1.6 million employees. If you pay them all just 50 cents more per hour, that's more than $1 billion in cost increases at Walmart. When you try to fix Walmart, you break Walmart. Walmart isn't accidentally giving you bad service. They're giving you bad service in order to provide you with the low prices that you demand, right? Now let's go to Target, right? Target, right? They're Target because they're better service, better quality, better design. So why doesn't everybody shop there? Because the prices are higher than Walmart. Some people tell me they rip you off at Target, right? I don't want to pay for that. Okay, fine. Let's fix Target. Their problem is their prices are too high. So let's lower those prices. What are we going to have to do? We're going to have to sacrifice service, sacrifice quality, sacrifice design, and stop being Target and go back to being Target. Now, what some of you are thinking right now, and it's perfectly fair because this is what we've been taught our whole life. No, Dave, you just got to be well-balanced and well-rounded. You got to be the value proposition. You got to give people the best of both worlds. There's a company that tried that in this exact space, and it's called Kmart. Kmart was the low price leader. If you're old enough to remember, they were the savings place. They were the blue light special. They were the place to save money before there was a Walmart. But when Walmart came to town, instead of Kmart building on their strengths, Kmart decided to try to be more well-balanced and well-rounded. They tried to be a little bit of Target and a little bit of Walmart. They hired Martha Stewart, and they tried to be a little bit of both, and they ended up neither, and they ended up going bankrupt, right? They ended up going bankrupt. And then they came out of bankruptcy. They saw the light. They changed their ways. They picked a new strategy, and they succeeded. No. They came out of bankruptcy, learned absolutely nothing from it. They inexplicably bought Sears. They both kept their same strategy, and then they both drug each other to the bottom in a second bankruptcy. And now you can't shop at Kmart anymore because they don't exist. They didn't become the best of both worlds. They became the worst of both worlds. They didn't become well-balanced. They became average, mediocre, and invisible. And that's what this presentation is about. That in our efforts to get better and help other people get better, if we have the right intentions, but we have the wrong framework, we don't actually get better. Even though we're putting in a tremendous amount of effort, we end up getting worse and making other people worse. We turn our organizations into Kmarts. We turn our kids into Kmarts. We turn our employees into Kmarts. We turn ourselves into Kmarts because we're so focused on fixing weaknesses that we end up damaging the corresponding strengths because we don't understand this one principle about how people work and how organizations work. And that's why what makes us weird also makes us wonderful. We need to accept that. We need to believe that. We need to appreciate that. What makes us weak also makes us strong. And speaking of appreciation, let's talk about that for a second, right? George Eliot said, every limit is a beginning as well as an ending. Some motivational speakers love to tell you there's no limits. That's a lie, right? There's limits, right? There's limits. I graduated high school. I was 6'4", 145 pounds. I had the body of a JV girls basketball player, okay? I didn't get to be a professional football player, not because of a lack of drive, not because of a lack of initiative, not because of a lack of a motivation, but because I was given a body of a 12-year-old girl instead of a full-grown man, right? That's the reality. There's no amount of human growth hormone. There was no amount of steroids that could turn me into a football player. Okay? There's no limits, I want to be clear, to your happiness. There's no limits to your impact. There's no limits to your influence. There's no influence to your success in life, but there are specific things that you simply aren't designed to do. And George Eliot said, every limit is a beginning as well as an ending. What does that mean? It means that what we can't do helps us to focus more clearly on what we can do. And as we move away from some things, we're moving towards other things. If you literally could do everything, then how would you choose to do anything? Because every door is open to you, right? Every limit is a beginning as well as an ending. So let's watch how that's true. Let's look at one limit, dyslexia. If you have dyslexia, you struggle to read and struggle to write. And if you struggle to read and struggle to write, you're going to struggle in school. And we've all been taught that if you struggle in school, you'll struggle in life. And that's why they were really surprised when they were studying millionaires in the United Kingdom and discovered that 50% of the millionaires in their study had dyslexia, even though only 10% of people in the general population have dyslexia. They were studying entrepreneurs, people a lot like a lot of the people watching this right now, entrepreneurs in the United States, and they discovered that 35% of the entrepreneurs in their study had dyslexia, even though only 10% of people in the general population have dyslexia. Ingvar Kamprad, the billionaire founder of IKEA, had dyslexia. Richard Branson, the billionaire founder of the Virgin series of companies, has dyslexia. And what some people have been taught, and this is what you think, wait a second, Dave, this isn't the right story. This is a person who overcame their disability to succeed. This proves you wrong. But that's not the story. When they asked Richard Branson, how has dyslexia affected your success? He said this, he said, strangely, I think my dyslexia has helped. Strangely, surprisingly, counterintuitively, against what we've all been taught to believe, I'm better because of my dyslexia. And the science is starting to back that up. Scientists are starting to realize that people with dyslexia don't have broken brains, they have different brains. And the same brain that causes them to struggle in school causes them to succeed in life at a higher level than most other people ever will. In other words, the weakness, the diagnosable disability, learning disability, is actually a massive strength that most people haven't seen and don't recognize. This is Paul Orfalea. Paul Orfalea had dyslexia and ADHD, right? Got dyslexia and ADHD. He got kicked out of 4 different schools during his schooling career, right? Then he would go work for jobs and he wouldn't just get fired. He'd get fired on the first day, right? He'd get fired on the first day. So he went to work for his own dad, and then he got fired by his own dad. So he left involuntarily, started his own company, turned it into a global empire, sold it to FedEx for $2.4 billion. Paul Orfalea is the founder of Kinko's, right? How do you become an entrepreneur worth $2.4 billion when you can't read and you can't write? It's by embracing, flaunting, and amplifying the weaknesses that everybody else told you to fix. Here's how Paul Orfalea thinks about his dyslexia. Paul Orfalea says, I think everyone should have dyslexia, right? I think everyone should have dyslexia. He loves his weaknesses so much, he wants you to have them too. He knows that he couldn't have the peak without the valley. He couldn't have the advantage without the disadvantage. He couldn't have the strength without the weakness. He doesn't want you to fix his weaknesses because he realizes how they're connected to and related to their strengths. He knows that what makes him weird makes him wonderful, so he's not trying to be more normal. He knows that what makes him weak also makes him strong, so he's not trying to fix it. He's embracing it and built a business around it. It's the whole subtitle of his book, which I encourage you to read, where he basically brags about having dyslexia and having ADHD because he knows that it drove the way that he ran his business and ended up making him successful instead of making him unsuccessful. This is one of my favorite stories, right? This is Matthias Schlitt. So imagine if you saw your weaknesses as strengths, if you reframed and you had the right framework and the right intentions, then what, right? Then what, okay? So let's talk about that. How do we behave differently once we think differently, right? You can't be around Andy for very long before he's going to tell you got to control your thoughts before you can control your behavior. You have to take control of your mind before you take control of your body and take control of your life. What we think is tremendously powerful. And if we start to see weaknesses as strengths, if we start to see the corresponding strength, if we start to reframe our characteristics, and instead of seeing them as negative things that have to be destroyed, we see them as positive things to be developed, then what do? Well, the first thing we do is we turn up the volume. The second thing we do is we find the right fit. Somebody posted a question in the chat. How does this fit with the right person in the right seats? Here's how it fits. Weaknesses become strengths when you find the right spot, when you find the right situation. My story isn't that I stayed in school, behaved exactly the way I always behaved, and sooner or later the teachers thought I was wonderful. No, teachers always thought I was the worst. It wasn't until I left that situation, became a professional speaker, that I found the right spot, I found the right seat, I put the right person, me, in the right seat, and then people saw my strengths when they used to see weaknesses, right? So this is all about alignment. So here's an example of alignment. This guy's name is Matthias Schlitt. He was born with a genetic abnormality called KTS. His right arm is 3 times the size of his left arm. His right arm is 18 inches around at the forearm. His left arm is 6 inches around. So how did he find alignment? How did he find the right seat? He became an arm wrestler. He found a situation in which his genetic abnormality, his disability was a massive, as you can all realize by looking at this picture, a massive strength. So he found the right fit, and then he amplified, he turned up the volume, because now his weirdness was something worth amplifying, worth jacking up. Now the question is not, how do I not look like such a weirdo? The question is, how do I make my already gigantic right arm even more gigantic so I can win even more arm wrestling matches? So he found alignment, and you'll know you found alignment when people start asking you to amplify the things they used to ask you to moderate. When people ask you to amplify, to turn up the volume on the things they used to ask you to reduce or eliminate. When they want more of the things they used to want less of, because they've started to see that characteristic of yours as a strength instead of a weakness. But let's look at his left arm again for a second. Couldn't that be a little bigger, right? We're not talking about euphemistic weakness here. We're not talking about abstract weakness. We're talking about actual physical weakness. How is this guy not bulking up that? How's he not doing some kind of Rocky montage, right? And doing the curls and doing the flexes and having that little squeezer thing that they sell at the stores, right? How is he not doing that? How is he not bulking that up a little bit? Make it match a little bit, right? Dude, why be such a weirdo? And here's the answer. Because you arm wrestle by weight class. You stand your entire body on the scale and you arm wrestle against people whose total body weight is the same as yours. But here's the catch. Once you arm wrestle them, you only get to use your right arm. And that's what Matthias Schlitt figured out. My right arm is all I get to use, but they weigh my whole body. So if I can keep the rest of my body as thin as possible and jack up my right arm as huge as possible, I'll have a maximum advantage against a well-balanced, well-rounded, normal person who's bulked up their right arm as much as they possibly can, but whose rest of their body pretty much matches. And all that extra muscle and all that extra weight counts against them on the scale. I'm going to dominate not by what I do, but also by what I don't do. So here's my question to you all today. And as you go through the rest of the year, in what way are you arm wrestling by weight class? In your life, in your career, in your business, what are the things that truly matter? And here's the thing, people love to tell you everything matters, and it doesn't. Right? What are the things that truly matter, and what are the things that don't? Because truly successful people aren't just successful because they do more than everyone else. They're also successful because they know what to not do. And I don't mean like not drinking, not smoking. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about good things that aren't necessary, are irrelevant, or actually drag your business or your life down because they're not necessary for you. They're not crucial for you. They're not relevant to your success, and they're a distraction. Alignment, amplification, but also avoidance. If we move towards the right things, we have to move away from the wrong things. Another great example of alignment is Specialisterne. It was started by a guy named Thorkild Sohn in Denmark. He had a son with autism. And he noticed that 2 of the symptoms of autism were hyperfocus and doing the same thing over and over again. And when he went to work, he noticed something interesting in software testing, that they needed people who could hyperfocus and do the same thing over and over again. And that in fact, typical people, normal people, couldn't focus enough and couldn't do the same things repetitively enough to succeed in software testing. And he said, wait a second, what if my son's disability is actually an advantage? What if it's actually a competitive advantage? What if there's nothing wrong with him just because he's different? What if it's different, not bad? And he started a company that did software testing, called it Specialisterne. It means the specialists in Danish. And they only hire people with autism to do software testing, and the disability becomes a competitive advantage inside of that organization. So back to the right seats. Thorkild Sohn didn't find the right seat for his son. He created the right seat for his son. And he didn't even find the right seat on the bus for his son. He created the bus. He built the bus and put in the seats and then brought in people who the rest of the world said are disabled. And he said, no, they're better than anybody you can find at this task. See, when we try to help people get better, we often try to change who they are when we need to change where they are. We oftentimes try to change the person instead of trying to change the place. The best question you can ask when you're trying to get better and you're trying to help other people get better is, how do I find the right fit? How do I help them find the right fit? Not what's wrong with them, not how do I try to get them to fit in, but how do I find the right fit? How do I help people match who they are to where they are? That's how you truly help people get better. So the great example here to tie this all together is the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? It's clear to see what's wrong with the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It's in the name, it's leaning. It's been leaning since 1173, 848 years it's been leaning. And in the 1930s, Mussolini decided that this was a national embarrassment. And he ordered his government engineers to fix it, to straighten it up. And they tried, and they failed. And that was a really lucky thing for the city of Pisa, wasn't it? Because millions of people have traveled millions of miles and spent millions of dollars to see a tower that leans. And the people who run the tower now recognize that, and they say on their website, because of its inclination, the tower has become the object of very special attention. Because of its inclination, that's what I'm telling you today, it's because of your inclination. We think of our job as adults, as professionals, as leaders, as parents, that our job is to straighten people up and to straighten them out, to put them on the straight and narrow, but it's not. It's because of the inclination that your life, your work, your business will become the object of very special attention. So the goal isn't to straighten things up, it's to keep the current tilt due to the vital role this element played in promoting the tourism industry of Pisa. If we want to get better, if we want to help other people get better, we have to have the right intentions. I'm assuming that today, but we also have to have the right framework. And we have to throw away what we've been taught by so many of our parents and our teachers and our employers that said, you got to find and fix weaknesses in order to get better. We have to recognize that weaknesses are also strengths, that the best things about us are oftentimes tied inextricably to the worst things about us, and that we succeed not by straightening up, but by preserving the tilt in ourselves and others. One of the things you need to have a good business and to have a good life is a powerful mission, and this is mine. It's from E.E. Cummings. He said, we do not believe in ourselves until someone reveals that deep inside of us something is valuable, worth listening to, worthy of our trust, sacred to our touch. I would do these presentations for people like you. I do these presentations for entrepreneurs, for executives, for managers, but they'd always come up to me afterwards and say, yeah, I'm going to use that in my business and with my people, but I got this kid with ADHD. I got this kid with dyslexia. I got this kid with autism. What can you do for me? So I wrote a book called The Freak Factor for Kids, and a lady named Stacy bought it once for her son named Leo, and he was 10 and he had ADHD, right? He was 10 and he had ADHD, and she took it home and she gave it to him, and he wrote me a note, right? He wrote me a note on a torn piece of paper that I still have to this day. And it said, thank you, Mr. Rendall, for the book. It made me feel better about who I am. Thank you, Mr. Rendall, for the book. It made me feel better about who I am, because I was the first person who told Leo that deep inside of him something was valuable. The very thing, his ADHD, that he'd been told his whole life was the most worthless and broken thing about him. That it wasn't worthless, that it was valuable, that it was worth listening to, worthy of our trust, sacred to our touch. And that's what I hope for you in 2021. That every day you wake up and you walk into the world, you walk into the other rooms of your home to meet the people that you live with, you walk into work, you walk into your community, and you're the person who shows other people that deep inside of them something is valuable. Maybe the thing that even you used to think was the most worthless thing about them, that it's worth listening to, worthy of our trust, sacred to our touch, because what makes us weird also makes us wonderful, and what makes us weak also makes us strong. Thank you very much.
Dave Rendall, always a pleasure having you with us. Everybody remember these books, Freak Factor, all of them are in the chat right now. If you'd like to order any of these, please go do that. Dave, real fast, what's your next adventure?
Next adventure is 2 years ago. I did rim to rim to rim as a hike. And then July 17th, we're raising money for, it's called, I forget the name. Operation Underground Railroad. That's what it is. Operation Underground Railroad. They try to stop human trafficking. And I'm doing it with Jeremy Pound and Jack Daly, and we're trying to raise money for that cause. And so this time the goal is to run it. So it's basically 26 miles each way with just massive elevation gain and descent in those 26 miles. It's also July, so it'll be like 130 degrees down in the canyon. So the goal this year is to run it, not to walk it. So to take it to the next level. So run it one day, run it the next day, run there, run back.
Yeah, Jeremy sent me an invite to that thing yesterday. And I'm actually going to be out west in July, so I'm going to check it out. So hopefully we see you there. Any questions for Dave really fast? We're up on time, but I wanted to open up the floor. If anybody's got any quick questions, just put it in chat. Emily, anything?
Yeah, Andy, I got one directly to me, and it says, What if the weaknesses of an employee impacts their ability to deliver in a team?
Yeah, I mean, that goes to alignment. So this isn't saying everybody's right for you. It's saying everybody's got something, but it might not be for you. It might not be for your company. It might not be for your team. It might not be for that team. It might not be for that department. So this is not a love everyone, give everyone a hug, nobody ever gets fired. In fact, this is a fire people sooner. Recognize, you don't have to give up on somebody as a human being. That's our normal process, right? I've tried everything. This person is obviously just a degenerate and we can't keep them anymore. You don't have to get to that point. You just go, you know what? We really need somebody who's a team player and you're really strong with independence and self-direction, but that's not really what we need here. And so this isn't a good fit. This just isn't the right spot. And so that's how I deal with those kinds of things. And now, again, I think it's helpful to think a little bit more about it. Think about what your teams are doing. Think about whether people are seeing weirdness as bad instead of good, whether you're accepting of people who are unusual or different, whether maybe you're missing this person's strengths. But I think in general, it's perfectly okay to say this person isn't the right fit for us. This person isn't the right fit for our organization. You know, Google, I got fired and it's the best thing that ever happened to me. And you'll see all sorts of famous and successful people who needed someone to free them from a job that they were going to stick with, even though they weren't good at it, because they were just trying to get a paycheck.
Good answer. Good answer. Anything else, Em? Anything else popping in?
Nope, we had one question, but Chip answered it. So I think we're good to go. I appreciate your
Yep.
time.
Chip, you don't get to answer my questions, man. I don't know
Dave,
what you
Dave,
think.
you answered it
I
as
don't know
well.
what you think is going on.
Dave, I'll send you his home address so you can go visit.
We're
him.
lucky this is not an in-person event. We would be going after it right now.
I was just doing what I was asked to do, Dave.
Mano e Chippo. We'd be going after it.
All right, man. Love you. Thanks for being with us today. You're welcome to hang out as long as you want to, and I'll follow up really fast. All right, so moving on. Remember, Tiny Superheroes today. We have set a goal of 100 capes in sponsorship. Right now, we are at 23. When we hit 100 today, so if you just put the link back in there, Emily, anybody can do this. It's $30 to sponsor one of these kids. When we hit 100, I will write a check for another 100. So that'll make us, I'll match whatever, as long as we get to 100, I'll match the next 100. We'll get to 200 today and make Robin very proud. Really fast, make sure you have your playbook. Leah did a great job putting this together. Make sure you have that out. On page 22 in the playbook is a place for you to write questions. Middle of the day, we're going to do some roundtable discussions. And at the end of the day, we're going to have panels. So it's a great place for you to just pop in some questions and keep those coming throughout the day. The segments we're going to be running from here on out are 50 minutes in length, 50, with a 10-minute break in between. In that 10-minute break, we want you to get some water, get some air, take a break. And if you have questions, just stay on and we'll pose those questions and get the person that just did the presentation to answer those questions. Everybody good? Give me a thumbs up if you're good. You can see your faces, Morgan. All right, awesome, awesome. All right, up next is David Pierce. David Pierce comes to us from Kentucky. He is in the spirit of the Derby this week, as you can see from his smiling face. And he's going to be talking to us about personal financial fitness, making sure that we have our personal finances in line. And David, don't want to take any more of your time. This is an amazing presentation. Take it away, my friend.
Thanks, AB. Yeah, it is a great time to be in Louisville, Kentucky this week. The weather is absolutely perfect. Come on down. I get you, everybody free tickets to the Derby. Just let me know. I'll take care of that for you. All right, let's get started. We're going to get personal, and we're going to talk a little bit about personal finance. Share this screen. You should see that screen now. You know, this is very near and dear to me. I've worked with my kids actually in getting some of their financial matters in order. I've worked with a number of individuals, a number of families, and just more committed every time I get to talk to